Hey, and welcome back to Knit Your Stress Away, the podcast all around knitting for beginners, for busy moms who are looking to find a brand new hobby that helps them release their stress. And I'm just so excited because spring is just around the corner. And if you've been itching to start something creative and something new, I have just the thing for you today. Knitting projects that are simple, fun, and best part, totally free. So I am sharing 4 beginner-friendly knitting patterns that you can literally start right now without spending a dime on the pattern. Obviously, you will still need the yarn and the knitting needles, but the pattern themselves are completely free. Some of them even have tutorials that you can follow along, so it's super duper easy to get started with these and get a little bit of a head start on your spring wardrobe. So let's dive in. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away. I am Nadine Medina, a mom who rediscovered knitting during a stressful season and found it to be the ultimate way to relax, recharge, and reconnect with myself. If you're feeling overwhelmed and wondering if there's a creative outlet that could actually help you feel calmer and in more control, you're in the right place. In this podcast, I'll show you how knitting can be a simple stress-busting tool, even if you've never picked up needles before. So take a deep breath, let go of the chaos for a moment, and let's explore how knitting could become your new favorite way to find calm and joy. All right, let's dive into today's episode. I am always so excited to kind of go from one season to the next when it comes to my knitting projects because, I don't know, there's just something fun and exciting about using different materials, using different yarns, because for different seasons, obviously, you're going to need different fabrics. So going into spring is already one of my favorite parts of the entire year. I don't know about you, but I just love this time of year when everything kind of wakes back up and, warms back up and we go outside more. And these patterns that I'm sharing today are, number one, they're free, which I thought was such a fun thing to do. I researched some patterns. These are not patterns that I have knitted myself before, but I have knitted patterns by the designers that I'm sharing from. So I know for a fact that they're amazing designers and that their patterns are really, really awesome. And some of them even come with tutorials, which I find so cool. So you can literally watch a video as you go along and knit the pattern. But I think my favorite part about the kind of in between the seasons weather is that you can layer. I am a huge fan of layering. And these patterns that I'm sharing with you now, with the exception of one of them, are all perfect layering pieces, which makes it so fun because the combinations with your existing wardrobe are quite literally endless. So let's dive into these 4 free beginner-friendly spring knitting projects that I have curated for you right here on the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. Number 1. Oh, and by the way, all links are in the show notes, so no worries if you're like, where can I find these? I'm talking about them. I'm talking about the reason why I picked them in this little curation of spring projects. And of course, the links are all in the show notes. So no worries there. You don't have to panic now that you're missing something. They're all there for you. And you can always find a previous podcast and the show notes plus all the links by going to thenittingmamas.com/podcast. You can see a list of all of them. And if you have a specific podcast in mind and you happen to know the number of the podcast, you can just go to thenittingmamas.com/podcast/ and then the number. So for this episode right here, you would go to thenittingmamas.com/podcast/80. And you would find all the links again, even without having to go into your podcast app. All right. Whew. Little housekeeping. All right. Let's go into the list of the 4 beginner-friendly spring knitting projects that I have found for you. So number 1 is called the Open Trails Slipover. It's a pattern by Ashley Lillis. You can find her on Instagram as well. I'm going to link her up down below. And it is a super cute vest/sweater that you can layer with some of your favorite pieces. You can either layer it over a button-up shirt, you can layer it over a long sleeve, or even a short sleeve shirt, depending on the temperature right now, which in the spring, there's kind of no telling, right? It can be chilly, it can be a little warmer, but this is like the perfect layering piece that you can combine with so many things that you already have in your wardrobe. It is a super easy pattern, so it's completely suitable for beginners, and it'll help you get out of your comfort zone just a little bit because it has a little bit of shaping to it, but nothing too complicated. So I think if you're, beyond your first and second project that were easy and simple, you can absolutely tackle this one. And Ashley made it easy because she has YouTube tutorials on her website, which is so amazing. So I would definitely encourage you to check that out. And your creativity is endless here too, because you can make one or two depending on what colors you pick. You can make different colors. You could even use stripes if you like. I think the possibilities are really endless here. So fun. Number 2, this is the only piece that's not necessarily a layering piece because it's actually an accessory. And it's a tote bag. I'm a huge fan of tote bags. If you've been following me for just a hot minute, you know I love tote bags of any kind. Like, everywhere I go, I need to find a tote bag. But I also have made my own tote bags. So now I have such a huge collection that I can't even decide. Like, I think I literally have a tote bag for probably, I don't know, 2 months. If I wore a different one every single day. Maybe not 2 months, but definitely 1 month for sure. Like, there are so many in this house and I just love them. I put books in them and I just I like to carry a small, tiny purse and then I use a tote bag for everything else. And I literally regularly switch them out. So this one might actually go on my personal list as well. It's called the Folio Tote and it is from Lion Brand. Together with Two of Wands. You have heard me talk about Alexi from Two of Wands quite a few times already. This happens to be a free pattern, or you can also buy it as a kit from Lion Brand if you want to get the materials all together at the same time. But if you have already some yarn at home and you just want to get the pattern, it's totally free on her website. If you ever want to buy one of her patterns as a PDF to make it easier, so you don't have to follow along on the website with the images and all the other stuff, you can always use the code knittingmamas15 on her website. I'm putting that in the show notes as well, and you get 15% off of your pattern purchase. But this is a super stylish and practical project. It's super easy to knit. You will need knit stitch and purl stitch because it's a stockinette pattern, but it has cute little stripes and kind of a short handle. So it's not necessarily an over the shoulder tote, but one that you can just hold in your hand or, slide over your wrist, which I think is so fun as well. But it's made with super simple stitches. Like I said, there's not really any shaping happening. So even if you're really new to knitting, you can totally handle this one. And I can't wait to actually see what you're making out of this one because there's so many possibilities in terms of the colors and the stripes. You could also just make it, you don't have to use stripes. You can make it a solid color as well. And it is made from Hue and Me yarn, which is my favorite bulky yarn that I recommend to any beginner. So perfect right here. I think it's a good intro to knitting flat projects before you kind of dive into more advanced ones after this, or maybe even one of the other ones from this list. All right, the pattern is linked below in the show notes or on the blog post as well that I just mentioned earlier. All right, number 3. It is a beginner garment. However, this one has a couple of things in there that may be challenging, which I think is totally fine if you're feeling up for the challenge. This is called the Streamline Tee. Actually, I just realized I actually made this one. I made this one time completely, and then I have a one that I started, and I started it a little bit too late last summer. Or maybe even in the fall. And then I didn't get to finish it before it got really chilly outside. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to put this on hold for the spring. So it's going to be the perfect time for me to pick this one up. I'm going to make it right alongside you. So it's a lightweight knit t-shirt. It's pretty simple to make as it's made from 2 pieces that you then seam together. So it's not made of one piece. That always adds a little bit more challenge to the whole piece, which is not to say that you can't tackle that, but I always find it easier in the beginning when you're relatively new to construct your garments from multiple pieces and then seam them together. So you really are kind of working with rectangles and squares and then put them together to create the shape. This one has this gorgeous, like, cascading pattern in the front because it's a V-neck shirt. So again, there is a little bit of decrease and increase happening here, but her descriptions and the way she shows it in the pattern are so easy to understand. I know this for sure because I have made this one. I can highly recommend it. And it's made with the yarn that's actually her own yarn called Color Story. And it's perfect because very lightweight. It's actually like a all year round kind of a yarn. So you can make warmer garments with it, but you can also make t-shirts with it, which is amazing. And the colors are stunning. So the first one that I made was kind of like this mustardy color. And the second one I'm making is more of a slate gray. I love them both. And the color possibilities, once again, endless here. And why do I love a good knitted shirt? Because you can combine it with so many awesome things. Like, I love layering my knitted t-shirts under a denim jacket. It's like one of my favorite ways to wear them. But of course, you can also just layer it with another cardigan or maybe a very thin scarf. I have made a few handmade knitted scarves, like super skinny, like a mini scarf is what they call them. And you just like a necktie. It's not even really a scarf. And I think it goes really well with one of your knitted t-shirts. So once again, find the free pattern in the show notes. Buy 2 of Wands for this third pattern that I'm sharing called the Streamline Tee. And last but not least, I think a cardigan is always such a staple in your wardrobe, especially for the spring when it can get chilly really quickly or even at night and you need your layering. You need your layers. So you can just take this one with you, throw it on when you need it, and then take it off when you don't. It's called the Ridgeway cardigan, and it's again from Ashley Lillies, which the first pattern was also by her. It's a classic top-down cardigan that is surprisingly beginner-friendly. So if you've ever wanted to make a sweater or a cardigan and you felt sort of intimidated because it just looks complicated, this is the perfect first one. It's not complicated at all. And she has another tutorial that walks you through how to do the whole thing. I think that's priceless and it's free. It's free. I love that. And so this is a little bit more of a chunky one, which again, I highly recommend that for beginners. When you make a cardigan or a bigger piece and it's made from cotton or something very thin, it can take quite a while to complete. So I was aiming for finding pieces that you can create quickly so that number one, you have a quick win. You feel really confident about your abilities and being able to wear it. For crying out loud, we're making these things, yes, to knit, yes, to relax, yes, to stress relieve, and, to be in the process, but we also want to wear it, right? So it needs to be done in, not 5 months of time, but in just a couple of weeks. And this one will completely fit that bill. So I'm super excited to see what colors you pick and which piece you're actually going to make. So I would love to see what you pick from this list. If you felt inspired by this list, if you maybe already have something that you have planned for your spring wardrobe that you want to update for your spring knitting, and I would just love to see it. So there's 2 ways for you to share that with me. Number 1 would be just go to my Instagram, the knitting or at the knitting mamas _. You can find me there every single day. You can just share it in your stories. You can tag me at the knitting mamas _. You just tag me in your stories and I can see what you're making there. Or you can go into our Facebook community for beginners and you can share a picture right there. To get into the community, you can simply go to thenittingmamas.com/group and I will let you in there unless you're already in there, of course, which I love that. Can't wait to see what you're making this spring. So just a really quick reminder, if you're just getting started knitting or you need a refresher because you may be like me who didn't pick up knitting needles for 20 years and then was like, what happened here? Don't forget to grab the free knitting cheat sheet that I created just for you as a beginner or, again, somebody who's re-entering this space. It's packed with beginner tips, your essential supplies, and simpler explanation of the most common knitting terms and abbreviations so that you can start with confidence. And you can find that cheat sheet totally free at thenittingmamas.com/start. Obviously, I'm also going to link that one in the show notes so that you have easy access to all of that. And I hope that it's already springy where you are. I know sometimes March can be a little unpredictable, but we're there. We're getting there. I'm just so excited that the days are longer. I can tell you that. I love walking at night, but I don't like to do it in the dark. So for me, this is just, yeah, it's the best. And it just gets me excited. Once summer comes around, ask me again how happy I am about the weather. Usually in my area, it's just kind of unbearable. So not quite. So I'm definitely savoring this season right here. And the fact that knitting can be done all year long. It is not a winter only kind of a hobby, which I find fantastic. And I really, really hope that this pattern roundup inspired you to pick up your needles and start a new project this spring. I personally don't think there's anything better than seeing something come to life that you made with your own hands. So until next time, right here on the Knit Your Stress Away podcast, happy knitting, my friends. And please reach out to me if you have any questions about anything that I talk about right here on the podcast. All right, I will talk to you next week and see you in the community. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to theknittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best. Catch you next time on the Knit the Stress Away podcast.